Well, if you thought Toyota engine recall was bad with 100,000, Honda says, well, hold my beer, Toyota. We've got 1.4 million Honda V6s and Acuras under investigation for engine failure. And it's really eerily similar to what's going on with Toyota. Let's go through the models that this covers really quick. First up is the 2016 through 2020 Honda Pilot with the 3.5 liter V6, the 2018 through 2020 Honda Odyssey van, the 2017 through 2020 or 2019 Honda Ridgeline, the 2016 through 2020 Acura MDX, and the 2018 through 2020 Acura TLX. The National Highway Traffic Safety Administration said on Monday it is opening a probe into 1.4 million Honda vehicles after reports of serious engine issues. Honda in November of 2023 recalled 250,000 vehicles, 249,000 vehicles in the United States with the 3.5 liter V6 after Japanese automakers said that the manufacturing defect in the engine crankshaft could cause the connecting rod bearing to prematurely wear and seize, leading to engine failure. This is similar to what you saw with the Toyota failure recently, but the Toyota's was on the main bearing. All leads to the same path, which is engine replacement and potential huge downtime and huge cost for customers. So I would absolutely stay away from any of these Hondas past 2016 with the 3.5 liter V6. So the reason this investigation is opened is because Honda had this recall originally in 2023, but they didn't cover all of the vehicles. So now they've got 173 reports that are outside of the recall. They weren't covered by the recall, and they display the exact same failure characteristics as those with the recall. So that's why this is getting blown up to pretty much anything made from Honda with that V6 from 2016 on. And here's an example. I'm starting to see these reports come out in 2024 of these slightly older Hondas starting to have engine knocking issues, just like Toyota. This is courtesy of the piloteers.org forum. 2016 Honda Pilot EXL engine knocking at 63,000 miles. Honda was refusing to fix the problem for vehicles that were not included in the recall. Here's an example from this forum. We towed the vehicle to a third party to do more diagnostics since Honda dealership refused to do anything else after the quote. Third party said that the problem was the crankshaft or rod bearing on cylinder 5, but the Honda dealership confirmed that the vehicle was not included in the connecting rod bearing recall. Hence, this investigation of the 1.4 million vehicles. It looks like they relayed the full story to Honda customer service on May 30th, and they reached out and said that they approved the claim. So luckily, Honda did, in fact, back this after customer service caught wind of it. However, his mother, in this case, still has to pay 10% of the engine replacement, so $650 out of pocket from what he understands. And here's the original quote that he received. If you look at this, this is really sneaky. They have in the top part of this invoice here, used engine. So they were going to put a used engine in, $3,900 with it had 56,000 miles on the engine. Instead of getting this used engine, he actually got it approved for a remanufactured or new engine. So if you are looking at one of these cars used, well, first of all, don't look at one of these used. But if you do, look at the Carfax and see if there's any engine work done. Because you might end up being in this scenario. Looks like the total with a used engine was going to be $8,500 out the door. Another interesting point, the Acura service bulletin says the 2016 through 2020 MDX is all trim levels, and 2015 through 2020 TLX is the V6 only. Now they do say check the VIN number status for eligibility. My guess is that it's going to end up including all of them at this point. Just judging by the 1.4 million number, I'm guessing that it's going to be the vast majority. And I went to go look at the NHTSA engine problems on carcomplaints.com. Of course, they give it the beware of the clunker seal. Gee, I wonder why. This complaint on June of 2024, internal failure, the bearings and crankshaft failed. The engine fails, the vehicle may lose motive power. Exactly the same problem. So this is a 2016. Here's another complaint on July of 2023, November 12th, 2023. Recall was issued for the engines indicating rod bearing may wear and seize the engine for certain 2016 Honda Pilots. Oh, it wasn't just the 2016s. Next one below it, June 17th. My 2016 Honda Pilot with a 3.5 engine has known issues for rod bearing failure. Another one down here on June 17th, 2023, engine connecting rod bearings failed, causing engine to seize. Now, something you need to pay attention to, these are 2016s and they're just now starting to fail in 2023, 2024. So I personally wouldn't think that the 2022s, 2021s, further years that aren't included in this recall, I wouldn't necessarily think that they are out of the woods yet, because they may not have really known about this. They didn't know about it until 2020 when the investigation started. So what's to say that the 2020s and 2021s aren't going to have this problem further down the road? Same thing with the 2017s, rod bearing failure. And here's a 2019 rod bearing failure, engine failed. And same thing with the Honda Odysseys. Here's a 2019 engine made a clicking sound. He complained about it for nearly 10 months to the dealership and other mechanics until he forced a mechanic to drive it around with him. They first found metal shavings in his oil pan, found that rod bearings 2 and 6 were fully scorched and now needs a new engine. And if the engine problems weren't bad enough for Honda with these 16 through 20s, check out these transmission issues they had. They had more transmission problems reported than engine problems. Transmission jerks, failures. Look at this poor guy. He said he has a 2016 with 78,000 miles on the clock, and his transmission blew up June 2024. And then he apparently bought it certified, but they said it wasn't covered, so now he has to pay $8,000 for a new transmission. That is crazy. Next one down, same thing, went 99,000 miles. Bought it for $29,900. The transmission replacement was quoted at $7,000 from Honda. But that is for a used transmission with 100,000 miles on it. Why on earth would he want 100,000 miles on a transmission that he's replacing? It's insane. A new transmission, he says, was quoted at $10,000 from Honda. And I'm sure this will make people mad, but here's why I would stay away from pretty much any of these Honda Acura V6s, at least for the foreseeable future, till we can see if the later ones after 2020 actually continue to have similar problems. And this is why. So chronologically, on February 2020, Honda received the first market complaint, they claim, for the issue. And then in July of 2020, they began to investigate the issue. So it takes a long time when manufacturers find an issue and then they start investigating. They didn't issue this recall until 2023. Do you really think that they changed the supply chain for these engines and the rod bearings from 2020 to 2022? I'm guessing not. They have to find out what the problem is. They have to go through QA, QC, test the new materials. So they probably had to, I believe, change the rod bearing material. They may have had to change clearances. And then they have to test all that and then get it approved. So I mean, even beyond 2020, I think there's going to be probably even more than 1.4 million affected, unfortunately. And keep in mind, if you own one of these, it's not a guarantee that it's going to happen to you. Looks like this investigation might turn into an expanded recall, which would be good for you if you do own one. But if you're in the market for one of these used Hondas, I don't think personally that it would be worth playing roulette. It's sort of like the Toyota issue with some of those Tundras. Just not really worth wondering if you're going to get a bad one or not. You don't want to go through the hassle of getting a new engine, potentially being stranded on the highway, or getting into some sort of an accident because you lose power just randomly. And you don't really know when these issues are going to happen. These engines are built so, they're so refined that a lot of these problems, you can't even tell when they're happening or when the bearings are actually getting worn. And it just happens in an instant, and then you lose power and the engine seizes up. So I've seen some reports of fires on these as well, because the rod bearing shoots out the side of the block after it seizes, and then oil leaks out and it starts a fire. Those are extreme cases, but it can happen. I long for the days when people used to say, just buy a Toyota or a Honda. That Japanese quality, remember the old K24s? Almost everything built in the 90s, late 90s and 2000s was really bulletproof from Toyota and Honda. But anymore, I don't feel like they're much more, or if any, more reliable than some of these other manufacturers. And it's not that the other manufacturers are better. They're all having these issues. It's just frustrating that the two manufacturers that everybody talked about, Toyota and Honda, are having these types of issues. I mean, catastrophic engine failures. These are not small failures. Such a bummer. Anyway, thanks for watching. Until next time.